Now that you've had an overview of what the person you're going to be calling needs to do, let's talk about the process you will use to call this person. This is called an ecclesiastical ballot. The ecclesiastical ballot is defined according to your section 904 of your synod's constitution, and it provides for the way in which you will elect a bishop. The term ecclesiastical ballot comes from the governing documents of the ELCA. Since the beginning of the ELCA, elections for presiding bishop, vice president, and secretary at the church-wide assemblies has been by ecclesiastical ballot as provided for in the Constitution under 904. And is not most, but not all synods use this provision. You do. Regardless of the process, a bishop whom you will elect is elected for a 6-year term, which you just established begins 60 days following the election of the bishop. I really think one day after would be an interesting, no, I would not ask that of anyone, thank you very much. Your Constitution prescribes a multiple ballot election process with a different number of nominees and a different vote requirement on each ballot. Absent ties, the maximum number of ballots will be 5. An election can occur on any ballot. On the first ballot, the name of any rostered clergy person can be placed in nomination. It's important that you now listen to what I'm going to say. The person can be on any of the clergy rosters. Thus, a retired clergy person is eligible for nomination. They may quickly withdraw, but they are eligible for nomination. When instructed, voting members will write the name of a person on the ELCA clergy roster they wish to nominate as Bishop of the North Carolina Synod. If any nominee receives 75% of the legal votes cast on the first ballot, he or she will be elected. If no one is elected, the first ballot shall be a nominating ballot. In other words, everyone's name who appears on the first ballot is considered as a nominee for the office of bishop unless that person withdraws. Moving on, I want you to understand the definition of legal ballots. At the risk of oversimplifying it, a legal ballot is one that's filled out correctly. Blank ballots are abstentions and do not count. So let me give you an example. If there are 100 ballots cast, 10 are blank and counted as abstentions, they are set aside and do not count into the total. 2 are illegal, meaning someone was voted for who was not on the clergy roster of the ELCA, or someone voted for 2 persons instead of 1. Those are illegal ballots and they are set aside. In this example, then, there would be 88 legal votes. 75% of 88, or 66, would be the required number for election. So the first ballot must be for a clergy person on the clergy roster or the roster of ordained ministers of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Only one name, and it takes 75% for an election to occur on the first ballot. Please note, the first ballot is scheduled to take place as soon as I finish these instructions. It's important that voting members be seated at the tables. Being in the chairs in the back means you've given up your right to vote. If you are a visitor like me sitting at the staff table, you shouldn't be given a ballot. Only those with teal name tags should be given a ballot, and we will go through the exact process in here in just a moment. But please note, this election ballot will take place as soon as the instructions are done and we move on to that process. It's also important to know that at any ballot, proxy voting is prohibited. So you can't go out and have a cup of coffee and sit on the outside and vote. You can only vote if you are seated at a table. It's also noted that before each ballot, before you vote, even if we have distributed the ballots, do not vote until we have had an opportunity for prayer. Please, again, this is a call process. We want to invoke the Spirit's presence with us. And so I'm going to overemphasize the point that we should have moments of prayer before we vote. We anticipate that the results of the first ballot will be given before the end of the second session today. Once those results are presented, an individual needs to contact the Elections Committee to either provide biographical information and sign permission for a background check, or to withdraw from nomination. This is unique to this synod, so let me make sure you hear me correctly. If your name is on the first ballot, you will need to contact the Elections Committee to either turn in your biographical information and your permission for a background check, or to withdraw in writing from the second ballot. This paperwork needs to be to the Election Committee by 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. A failure to have it in by 7 a.m. means that an individual may not withdraw from the election after 7 a.m. in the morning. So if someone sleeps on it tonight and says, I'm not going to allow my name to go forward, they need to let the committee know by 7 a.m. If they let the committee know at 7:30, their name will go forward in the election, and that deadline is firm. The second ballot will take place tomorrow. On the second ballot, I will instruct you to vote for your nominee of your choice. Again, it will take 75% of the legal ballots to elect a bishop on the second ballot. The third ballot will take place at a later time. Again, that will include the 7 persons with the highest votes on the second ballot plus ties. 2/3 of those voting on legal ballots will be necessary for election. And then the third ballot will contain the top 3 persons. On that ballot, 60% will be necessary for election. If there is not an election, the top 2 will proceed to the 5th ballot, and on that ballot, a simple majority is necessary for election. Are there any questions about the ecclesiastical ballot or the election process? Have I confused you, or are we clear with what we're going to be doing next? Confused you, put you to sleep, or you understood what I just told you? We are now going to turn to the first ballot for bishop of the North Carolina Synod. Again, voting members only seated at the tables. If you are not a voting member, I invite you to move back to the chairs, and let me give you some instructions, and then I'm going to ask, before we do that, I need to call for the Credentials and Enrollment Committee reports. Again, the reason we do this is we have to make sure we do not have more votes than we're legally authorized to have. Unless you say that would never happen. When I was re-elected bishop in Seattle in 2007, the Synod Council was registered the night before the assembly, and nobody told the Credentials Committee. And so the first ballot took place. They used a pre-nomination process. Mine was the only name on the ballot, and I wasn't re-elected on the first ballot because we had too many votes. So we need to make sure that we have the correct number of votes.
Bishop Boeck, Vice President Haywood, and members and guests of this assembly. On the behalf of the Credentials and Enrollment Committee, I would like to report that the total number of voting members that we've tried to count 27 different times, and we're pretty sure here, as of 1:41, when we closed the registration, is 555. 555 voting members.
Do not vote, but I'm going to invite the Elections Committee to begin distributing the ballots. Do not vote yet. Let me go through the instructions. When I call for you to vote, you can write the name of anyone on the clergy roster of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. A nominee can be on any clergy roster, active, retired, or on leave from call. Nominations from someone who is not on the clergy roster will be treated as an invalid vote. I do have a couple of requests for you. Please write clearly. If you don't know someone's full name, please give some identifying information. For example, Pastor Karen Jones from St. Barnabas Lutheran Church in Seattle. There isn't such a person or there isn't such a pastor, but just for the sake of clarity, give us the pastor's name, their congregation, and location. Please give the full name. If you write down Pastor Olson, there are over 150 Pastor Olsons on the clergy roster. You have not voted for anyone we know. We need to have more information than just that. We ask you not to fold your ballots. Turn them upside down and you will pass them toward your right, my left. When you vote, do not vote yet. If there is no election, the first ballot becomes a nominating ballot. The results of the first ballot will be reported according to the agenda at the second session. Again, a reminder, if a person nominated wishes to withdraw, they need to do so before 7 a.m. tomorrow. A nominee must receive 75% of the legal ballots cast on this ballot. When the ballots are collected, the first ballot for bishop will be closed. This is how the first ballot for bishop will occur. Are there any questions?